After the nukes fell, the world turned into a wasteland. Mobs mutated. They became corrupt versions of themselves. And not just the mobs, the terrain itself even began to be corrupted. And now let's take a look at this wasteland I created with only command blocks. But before I showcase my mob menagerie, I have to explain my vision for this project. You see, when I wanted to make part 2 of the nuke, I wanted the radiation zones to actually change the way the world feels. So part of what that looks like is radiation zones. Essentially, there's 2 types in the world. The number 1 type is with this red foggy haze. This is a high radiation zone near the center of a nuclear bomb, or at least where one would have went off. Additionally, if at least 10 nukes go off in your world, the entire world becomes radioactive. Not as much as these concentrated zones, so you won't get radiation poisoning nearly as quickly, and mobs won't mutate nearly as much as in the radiation zones, but the entire world now becomes this hazy nuclear winter. On top of this, as much as I wanted the mobs to change, I wanted the world to change too. So, as you guys can kind of already see, the terrain starting to transform a little bit. I'll explain that a little bit more as we go. But now, let's get into the mobs.
Tylko jedno w głowie mam, koksu 5 gram, odlecieć sam.
The humble cow simply becomes a mushroom in its radioactive form. There's nothing too special, it literally just becomes a mushroom. But don't worry, I didn't stop there, that would be quite boring. Rather, the mushroom actually has a separate radioactive form, as in once the mushroom's in a radiation zone for a while, it starts spreading mushroomness. You know, I don't know what the right word for that is, but this is kind of the base form. This is the first instance of how I wanted to transform the world through radiation, and it's actually through using radioactive mobs to basically transform the world around it. So essentially what's happening on a technical level is once you have a radioactive mushroom, it is occasionally spawning an invisible armor stand and then using spread players to basically put the armor stand in a random position somewhere around the cow, and then it's going to do a quick fill replace command. This means that blocks like dirt, grass, other things are going to become mycelium. Plants like flowers, bushes, all these things are going to become some kind of red or brown mushroom. And this is really starting to get into how I'm reshaping the world with radioactive mobs. And this is the same process that I'm going to use for most of the transformation mobs here. But like I said, what this means is that as the cows become radioactive, they actually start shaping the world around them. And it also means the longer you play a world, the more distinct and mutant it's going to feel.
Chicken jockey!
Now, chickens function pretty similar to cows in the sense that they merely get replaced with a baby strider. But the baby striders, upon becoming radioactive themselves, will actually netherify an area. That means things like dirt will become netherrack, things like cobblestone will become cracked nether bricks, things like grass become this crimson mycelium, or whatever you call it. And basically we have this spreading of the nether through the chickens. And of course, the more mobs you have, the quicker this transformation happens. Overall, it's not the most in terms of the mob being all that unique, but the netherification of the overworld through the chicken becomes a really fun further transformation of the world.
Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine.
I hope you didn't think I'd just stop by replacing mobs with other mobs. No, in some cases, I wanted to make the mobs look like themselves, but mutated and just not quite right. Example is the skeleton, which actually becomes bigger and just kind of has that weird angle where its head's just not quite sitting right on its neck. I think really encapsulates sort of this somewhat mutated thing that we're going for here. On top of that, while the skeleton does terraform the world, that's not all it does. It also got a little bit smarter thanks to the radiation, and will actually switch to a knockback sword if a player gets within a very short range. Then, if the player is further away, it's going to switch to an enchanted bow that does power and flame. This means that the skeleton is going to be a much more formidable foe. On top of being more dangerous, it will be actually even a little bit harder to kill. On top of all of this, though, also will terraform the world. The skeleton, similar to the mushroom or the chicken that we showed earlier, is actually going to make the world pale using some of the pale forest blocks that we have. Now, it's actually going to spread less often, but it's going to have little blotches rather than just single blocks at a time. And more than this, it's actually going to transform trees into pale trees. So this skeleton will really transform the overworld, especially in forests.
Oh man.
The creeper, upon becoming radioactive, is also going to become charged, meaning that number one, it's going to be visually distinct from the regular creeper, and number two, it's going to have a bigger explosion whenever it dies. However, this is a little basic, and we want it to do a bit more than that. So on top of everything else, like we've seen with the previous mobs, the creeper terraforms the world around it, specifically with green and moss, spreading like mossy cobblestone on top of cobblestone or dirt, spreading, dirt into moss, as well as some nether sprouts to kind of spring up. All of this is to help camouflage it. So the creeper is actually spreading its own camouflage as it's traveling around, further adding to this green terraforming radioactive look.
Her sister was a witch, right?
Now, because witches are a rare mob, they have one of the strongest terraforming corrupting abilities in the game. See, they actually spread skulk, and instead of spreading an area manually like some of the fill replace stuff that we already did, we're actually going to be using Skulk Catalyst built-in kind of corruption spread mechanic and tapping that into the witch. The idea for the witch is that the witch is able to protect herself from radiation poisoning using magic, and is able to use the radiation in combination with magic to create this powerful Skulk corrupting area. So what's actually happening is she's placing a single Skulk Catalyst and summoning in a few wolves and killing them instantly. Because wolves drop XP, but they don't drop any items, this is perfect for allowing the Skulk Catalyst to spread out and corrupt an area. And in a short time, a huge area can be corrupted by only a single witch.
You like jazz?
The next mob on the horizon is the humble Bumblebee. This mob is pretty simple in what it does. Similar to how all the other mobs work, it's spreading an armor stand to kind of affect a random area around it. It doesn't affect blocks, but it does affect flowers. See, the whole goal for this project, if you'll remember from the very start, is to make the world feel more dangerous. So the bee will actually turn nearby flowers of any type into wither flowers. This means that just walking around, you're actually going to be constantly at risk from hitting a damaging flower rather than a normal flower. On top of this, they do look a bit bigger visually, but there's not too much changing with the bee.
It's snowing!
The final three mobs do all transform the world, but not in the same way. The first of which is the Stray. Now the Stray, as it's walking around, will simply spread snow layers everywhere it goes. However, these aren't normal snow layers. You see, if you're standing in a snow layer that's near a Stray, you will number one be slowed, and number two take increased radiation poisoning. So be careful of the snow around these guys.
Slime cube!
Next up is the slime. Now the slime doesn't go through very many visual changes, but it does transform the world around it. As it's hopping around, it's going to have a little bit of slow fall, which means it can jump a little bit further. On top of that, though, it's going to be placing slime blocks everywhere. Now, most of the transformations happen above ground. The slime is unique because it is one of the very few mobs that will transform the underground primarily, because that's where you're mostly going to find slimes. So this is pretty unique, and it just kind of really transforms the world, and occasionally you'll find these little pockets where slimes were bouncing around for a while, and they're just huge slime pits. Lastly, we have the spider and the cave spider, which are essentially the same. The radioactive form causes their head to grow larger, and they'll start shooting out projectiles that will actually spread cobwebs. Once again, similar to the slime, this is unique as it's one of the few that will transform the underground, so expect to find a lot more cobwebs both in the caves and on the surface. Now that's all I'm going to be showcasing for part 1. I do have the part 2 commands ready, but quite frankly it's been a while since I posted and this editing is taking a while, so they're going to come out in a part 2 video, so make sure you stay tuned to see the custom mutated Enderman and the mutated Husk, as well as a whole bunch of other mobs that are really going to transform the way you play, make the whole world just a lot more hostile and interesting. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.